Hi, welcome. I'm Anna Colazzo from the Ottoson Middle School, retired teacher, and I have with me Miss Janice Weaver and Mr. Larry Greco, both who went to the Arlington Public Schools, and we'd just like to do a little retro of what life was like when they were in Arlington. So I'm going to ask both of you, what elementary school did you go to, and when did you go to the junior high west, which we now know as the Ottoson?
Well, I moved to Arlington going into the 4th grade, so I went to Cutter School. And then I entered Ottoson, what year did I, 56? No, wait a minute. I left 59, so I must have entered at 57.
57,
Yeah, 57.
I started at the Thompson School when we lived in East Arlington, and so I was there for half a year in kindergarten. I went to the Pierce School up through half of 2nd grade, and in February of '62, the Stratton School opened, and I completed my elementary education there.
Wonderful, wonderful. And when you were at school, like your elementary school first, how did you get to your elementary school, and then how did you get to the junior high west, Ottoson?
Really? We walked.
You walked.
I got a ride in the 7th grade in the mornings. 8th grade, I walked both ways, and until elementary school was always a walk.
Wonderful. Good to know. Thanks. Now, so we have a few questions now about the nuts and bolts of the building when you were there. So if you look at the Ottoson now, Janice, what was the building like when you were there?
Well, it basically looked the same. The back part was just there, and the front part was made, I think that was made while we were there. I can't really remember when it was made. It kind of looks the same.
So all your classes were in that older building,
Yes.
older part of the building?
Yes.
It was the older building and then the new auditorium gym. And between the older building and the gym, there were a couple of classrooms. There were some music classes down there. But predominantly, there were a whole lot of people in that old building.
And when you were there, what grade levels were there? Because that's changed over the years.
Well, when I was there, when I started there, the 7th, 8th, and 9th grade were there. We started in the 7th grade, obviously. But some of the 9th grade AT students went down early to the high school. And then when we got to 9th grade, we all went down there. We started the 4 years at the high school again. It used to be years ago, but our class was the first full class to start the 9th grade.
At Arlington High School?
Yes.
Larry, how
We
about you?
were just 7th and 8th grade.
Just the 7th and 8th grade. And of course, then we went to 6th, 7th, and 8th,
Right.
and now we're back to 7th and 8th grade again. Do you remember the library at all? What was that like?
No.
It was a classroom. It was a classroom that had stacks of books. That's all it was. And then when I started teaching in Arlington, they had media centers, and they were large areas with multimedia sorts of availabilities. And it changed very dramatically.
And so when you were there, did you have internet at the library?
Internet.
Just
We barely
thought
had
I'd ask.
telephones. What are
I
you
know.
talking about, internet? No, we did
Questions
not.
come from the kids, so
No,
the
we
kids all
did
want to
not.
know.
We did learn the Dewey Decimal System, both in grammar school and in junior high.
And
We
probably
just-
use the Reader's Guide to Periodical Literature. Yeah, no one knows that. How about typewriters, calculators? How about that?
We didn't have typewriters in junior high. I mean, the teachers, obviously, and the secretaries. We didn't have them. And in high school, you could only use it if you were in the college course and only your senior year, which I don't know what that rationale was, but
And were you allowed to use a calculator in math class?
oh, I never
They
used a
didn't
calculator.
exist for us.
No.
Well, they were available. You could pay a lot of money to get one. But the
Right.
first time I started using a calculator, I was in college.
Right.
In
I
college.
still don't use a calculator.
Slide rule, maybe?
Well, and I didn't trust it. I would have to
I
check
know,
the math.
that's exactly right. I
Okay,
know,
that was a lot of help. Yeah.
How about the dress code? Was there a specific
Oh, well,
dress
for ours,
code?
it was way different than yours. Yeah. The girls, first of all, wore, I put down here, we wore the poodle skirts with 42 petticoats underneath. I don't know how we sat down. And we always wore skirts or dresses.
So it was required that you wear a skirt or a
Oh,
dress
I don't
to
know if it
school?
was required. It just was that was the nature of the generation. It wasn't, no one ever said it was a requirement, and no one ever wore pants. So, and we wore ankle socks and T-strap shoes and saddle shoes. Those were the style.
Saddle
The
shoes.
boys wore whatever they could throw around their neck that looked like a tie. It didn't have to match. It didn't even have to be a real tie. So some of them were really pretty bad looking. in dress shirts.
Oh,
Well, the gentlemen wore dress shirts and ties and dress pants and also dress shoes. And if you didn't have a tie, you were sent home. And if you were sent home, the time you missed, you had to make up in detention. So most guys had a second tie in their locker just in case. And talk about not matching. It was the least attractive tie that you had, figuring you never wear it. And it would, of course, it'd be this paisley thing when you were wearing stripes, and everyone would say to you, "Oh, so you forgot your tie today, did you?" Yeah.
that's great.
And the girls had to wear skirts or dresses and dress shoes.
And dress shoes. Okay.
No slacks.
How about let's jump to foreign languages. Did you take any foreign languages, or were there any available?
I took them all except Latin and flunked them all. Yes, I did. French and Spanish, and that was it.
Did you take Spanish in
I
junior
thought I
high?
did, but maybe I didn't. I'm trying to remember where Mr. Giosa was, if he was in high school or junior high, because he was the cutest teacher ever, because he was young. He was the only young teacher we ever had, till you.
That would do it. Larry, how about you?
I remember French and Latin, and I remember it only being offered in the 8th grade. French might have been offered in the 7th, but I don't remember Spanish being offered at the Ottoson in those days, which of course was the West.
Was the West, Junior High West. We keep referring to that. Okay, how about the cafeteria? Like, did most kids bring their lunch? Did they buy their lunch? What was your favorite food in the caf?
Oh, the cafeteria was one line for us. We just went over to the little kitchen door in the corner, got
Yeah.
our lunch, our milk or whatever, and sat down at, just at tables, not assigned, but whatever. I don't know how many people brought their lunch. I think I brought it half of the time, but I always liked Salisbury steak. I don't want to make Larry sick.
Well, we had this discussion beforehand in terms of things we liked and didn't like, and that was one of my least favorites.
It's probably most people's.
They had a great pastrami sandwich. Most of the food was very good, but they were able to recycle hamburger and call it a lot of different things, one of which was Salisbury steak. It was not a different recipe. And then with peppers, it became pepper steak. And but there were many meals that were very good. There was one choice. You got to eat what they had to offer for your 25 cents, or you didn't eat. But you could buy a milk and an ice cream if you brought your lunch. Otherwise, you couldn't. Now, the cafeteria was configured interestingly when I was in school. In the 7th grade, the boys were on the right side of the cafeteria, the girls were on the left. And then we became progressive in the 8th grade, and boys and girls could sit at the same table, but not on the same side. The girls sat across from the boys. I don't know what they were afraid of, but it was, we felt like we had made great social progress that we could be integrated at our
Sitting on
tables.
opposite sides of the
It's
table.
funny you said that. You're right. Now that I think of it, we were all girls on one
It
side.
was segregated like that. Oh, that's too funny.
Who knew?
How about recess? Did you have recess in
I
7th
don't
and 8th
remember
grade?
having recess. No.
Okay, there was no
Gym
recess
a couple
now.
of times
Yeah,
a
gym,
week.
right.
Gym,
Yeah.
physical education, and no recess, even though they would love to do that. How about the way the school was organized? Janice, who was principal when you were there?
When I was there, it was Mr. Ottoson, actually. And then, well, after that was Mr. Mahoney, but yeah, Mr. Ottoson was
Mr. Ottoson,
And I
who-
think Mr. Degnan, this seems to ring a bell, was the assistant principal.
Larry, who was principal
Henry
for you?
Ottoson was the principal, and Glenn Wright was the assistant principal.
For your whole time
Yes.
there, for your whole
Yes.
time there. And how was the school itself divided? I mean, we have learning communities now, we've done clusters. How was that divided?
Ours, I think, was divided by our I remember being 8FX, so that was in the 8th grade, you were in the French class. So I think that's how they divided it, but it wasn't basically divided any other way other than your language, I
By
think. Yeah.
language. Larry?
Well, in the 7th grade, they had a very interesting grouping. They put the same group of kids together. Essentially, almost all the same kids were in all my classes. But what we had the same teacher for both English, geography, so that was 10 periods a week, plus 2 supervised studies. So that was like sort of our home base. But in 8th grade, it was essentially you were leveled by, grouped by levels, and there weren't any learning communities like we have now.
like we have now. And when you say you leveled in every subject, or was it just leveled by math, or there was a math level, an English level?
Well, I was with the kids who took Latin in 8th grade, so a lot of the folks who were in my classes were folks who were taking Latin.
We're taking Latin. And how many students do you remember being in a typical class?
I'd say 20 to 30. It wasn't small, but it didn't really matter. It's what we were used to in grammar school, so.
So the 20 to 30. huh?
And the same here, and it was interesting. There were a lot of students there, and
And
it
we
was
had more
in a
of those
small
years, yeah.
quarters. I counted in my class picture this morning 392 in my 8th grade picture.
that's
And you remember there was also the East.
That's right.
There were a lot of us, and when I graduated high school, there were about 660 that are mentioned in my
Yeah, you
yearbook.
had big
Yeah,
classes.
those bigger classes, we're slowly reaching
Right.
those
Because mine was only 300
numbers
and
again.
something,
So let's
334.
talk about discipline. So let's say someone got in trouble in school for
Why is she looking at us?
I
skipping a
don't know
class.
because I was never in trouble.
Well, of the- I
However,
didn't mean you.
I'll
So
tell
of
you.
the students you knew, what was like besides detention?
No,
I mean, was
that's
there,
about it.
That's
I
about
put
it?
down chewing gum was a detention.
That was a
and,
big
yeah,
deal.
thing.
Chewing gum was a real
Yeah,
big
it
deal.
was.
And I imagine on rare occasions there were people who might have gotten into a fight, but I can't remember anybody who did. I think maybe on rare occasions some children would have been caught smoking cigarettes. That was before,
Yeah.
when it was uncool, before
I
it was
had that.
not cool to smoke.
Smoking in
But-
the girls' room, they made a song
smoking
about
in
it.
the girls' room.
But I
And
don't
so-
remember anyone ever smoking in the school. It was a very safe environment, I have to tell you that. And, someone might have mouthed off, someone,
Someone.
and they might
we
have been
no
sent
way-
to the
Principals.
principal,
And then-
maybe.
And what would be the detention? Would it be like after school?
He didn't give me detention.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, he was very nice to me, and he knew I was quite frightened, maybe because I was shaking. And
So that's all it took.
That's all it took.
That's all it
usually
took.
And he
just
was
was
very nice to me and reassured me that he understood that I would not be engaged in that behavior again.
How about things like fire drills, earthquake drills?
We
Because
didn't-
we
I
have
don't
all
think-
kinds of drills
We didn't
now.
have earthquake drills. We had regular fire drills that you just went outside. It wasn't like, it wasn't the same as the ones I had in Charlestown that we had to get under our desks because I was very
The
old.
duck and cover?
Yes,
Yeah.
we were very old, and that was right after the war.
That was
So
right
we
after
kept
the
doing-
war. And do you ever remember having a fire at school?
Nope.
Or
Not-
a reason
not
that
in the
you were
junior
all
high,
outside?
no.
Not at the junior high. Nope, same thing, just the fire drills.
We were very
Okay.
complacent our era, just so you know.
So let's talk about the grading system. Do you think it was hard to earn high grades?
You had to work for them. Yes, it was. I
don't-
mean, don't you think that A was something?
No, junior high I did great. It was high school I went downhill, but no, I was.
But you
great
felt
in
you had to
junior
work hard to get those
No.
grades. Like an A wasn't easy.
No,
Like as long as
I-
you did your homework, you knew you'd get a B. No.
high. I don't ever remember sweating over that in junior high.
Well, what about homework then? Was there a lot of homework? Do you remember doing a lot of homework?
It was. I think it was considerably less than what we offer now. It was a different environment back then. I was thinking about this as I was preparing for today, and one thing that's consistent from 50 years ago, 55 years ago, is that the educational system wanted us to be respectful and to be educated and to be bright. But if I look back at it, they also, when I was at school, they wanted us also to conform. And you can remember, this was post-World War II, and so the schools always reflect what's going on in society or what's gone on in society. And so, we walked single file between classes. I know in some teachers' classrooms, when we walked by between classes, we had to be silent. There was a need to toughen us up, to discipline us. Whereas I saw by the time I came back 10 years later to teach, there was much more investment in the individual and who they were and what they had to offer. We were very much invested with the middle school idea way back when in the mid-70s, and we looked for developing the social and emotional development of kids very consciously. And it was from that desire that the grouping system, the clusters, first started. But it was a different time. It was they expected us to conform because that's what folks did. They also wanted to toughen us up. I mean, they were calling us by our last name in some situations, which I found incredibly insulting. But that's what they did.
That's what they did.
Nowadays, people wouldn't do that. I think people would probably find offense at that.
I think so. I would agree with you there. Do you, by any chance, remember any assemblies? Did you have many assemblies?
I remember having them, but I don't remember what they were about. I don't think we had a lot.
The musicians sometimes did.
Well, yeah, they'd have a musical.
When I was in the 8th grade, they had a group called Up With People perform.
Oh,
yes.
yes.
They're still, I think, in existence.
Yeah.
They are in existence.
I had
And
people
that was
stay at my
awesome.
house for that. I know, that was awesome.
They were just terrific.
That was a great group.
And what about sports? Did they have any sports team, girls basketball team?
Probably. No, just
Don't look at me. I didn't play in the girls' basketball team.
did I? No, just before I went to junior high, I was in the Cutter School playground playing basketball, and I broke my finger. So I didn't try out for the basketball team, and I wasn't very good
But
at
there
anything
was a
else.
basketball team.
Basketball and field hockey is all I remember. But now when I was looking at my yearbook, I think they had girls softball.
And do you think they played other towns, or they just played like
I
an
don't
intramural
really know. I
league?
wasn't really into that.
I remember intramural, but we were essentially grouped by our gym class. And so we were able to play intramural sports after school.
That's kind of a lot of fun.
Yeah, and there might have been other clubs. I know I was part of the chess club, but if there were other clubs, I didn't participate in them, and I can't tell you I remember them.
Okay, so when you were at Junior High West, what was your favorite subject and what was your least favorite subject?
I don't think I had a least favorite, but my two favorite were English and math. Those are my two favorite
Those are
subjects.
your two favorites.
Same here.
yeah.
And I loved all my classes. I can tell you there was a particular session of one class I didn't enjoy. In the 8th grade, I had Fred Tobin for gym.
Oh,
Fred
Mr. Tobin,
was a
yes.
former Marine, wonderful man. He's a legend in Arlington. He had just started his
Right.
teaching career, and he eventually became a social studies teacher, but at the time he was a gym teacher. And again, they were toughening us up. And so on this particular occasion, we had a box. And I was not the boxing type. And I mean, I just
geez,
couldn't
I
wait for
wouldn't
that
do
class
that.
to be over.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't do that.
But
Didn't like that boxing.
no, but I loved my classes. I
I
did. I
did
loved my
too.
teachers. I thought they were wonderful, and I had a wonderful experience at the Ottoson.
Well,
I did
speaking of
too.
teachers, who was your favorite teacher? Did you have a favorite?
My 7th grade teachers, who I had spent the English and the social, geography and the supervised studies, there were two women. They were Harvard interns. One did the first half of the year, and the other did the second half. And they came with wonderful, new, bright ideas, and they were awesome. I really loved them. But I have to say, I enjoyed all my teachers.
You enjoyed them all.
I enjoyed them all.
Janice, did you have a favorite?
Mr. Mahoney in the 7th grade, who he ended up becoming the principal of Ottoson, was our math teacher. And my friend and I had a little crush on him. So in the 8th grade, when we took cooking, we made him a cake. I don't know if it was any good, but we brought a cake over to him. But I liked all of my teachers too.
Well, and besides the sports, were there any other clubs that you heard of or were part
Well, the Glee
of?
Club and music clubs and probably, instruments and things like that. But, in our day, we were like, I hate when I say that. We were involved a lot in church activities, in after-school activities and Girl Scouts and everything like that. So there wasn't, at least for me, I wasn't involved in a lot of
Wasn't time
activity.
to be
Well, I
doing
just
that.
wasn't, I guess, not interested. I don't know. I don't remember being interested in being in anything.
Larry, do you remember any clubs?
I was in the Glee Club, but that met during school. It wasn't after school. And but other than that, and then the chess club after school.
Oh, the
and then I
chess
did
club.
the intramural
that's
sports.
In intramural sports. So there was plenty to do after school. Now, thinking back, did you have a lot of friends at that time? And are you still friends with some of those people?
All of my best friends went to St. James down the street. But I have a lot of friends from the Ottoson, and I still do keep in touch with them. And a lot of us worked at the hospital when we were old enough. So we all worked together, and we always had pajama parties and everything. And I still am close with a lot of my friends.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Same here. There's a number of folks from middle school or junior high in those days that I'm still friendly with. As a matter of fact, before I came down here, I had a conversation with Tommy Jennis, who sat in front of me during my classes.
So now when you communicate with these folks now, are you basically using texting, email, the telephone, or meeting up with them?
All the above.
All?
I don't usually use too much telephone. We mostly text each other, and we get together when we can. But now with the, since the COVID, we haven't gotten together as much, but we do get together.
How about music, Larry? What kind of music did you listen to back then?
Mary Barry was my 8th grade music teacher, and she was a more traditional teacher, and she was more interested in classical and show tunes and whatnot. But we were allowed, I think it was once a month, to bring in a record, and she would play it. So I'd bring my Beatles albums in.
The Beatles.
And, but that was pretty much what 8th grade was, more traditional. 7th grade I had Victor LaPointe, and Victor was much more hip. He was young, he must have been early 20s. And so we learned not only classical things, but we also studied contemporary music.
So would you say the Beatles were like your big hit that you always like to listen to the
Yes, I
Beatles?
still do.
Still do.
Still
Me
do.
too. Me too. Janice? do you
Well, I was more Elvis Presley and Roy Orbison, but I loved the Beatles, but I was already out of school. But I have a little memory here from Mr. Hermance, was our 7th grade music teacher, and he taught us this little song, and it's just this: splash, splash, drip, drop, patter, 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 pour. It was to tell us the how long the notes were. And it was to teach us that. I don't know anything about music, but I always remember that, and I don't know why.
Still remember
Yeah,
it,
I
Jan.
do.
Good for you. Still remember it.
He just passed away, actually, a couple of years ago.
Okay, let's turn to books. Do you remember a book that you read at the junior high West that you really liked?
I don't remember pleasure in reading, but I do remember what we read in English both years. 7th grade was Treasure Island, 8th grade was Ivanhoe. Both of which, as I look back at them, probably were more boy-centered, because probably boys weren't been interested in anything that didn't appeal to boys. And I loved both of those books.
You loved them both.
I loved them both. I thought they were absolutely wonderful, and I was lost in this fantasy land.
Love it.
Yeah, I loved Ivanhoe too. I remember that very well. I thought it was 7th grade, but it was probably 8th. But yeah.
Do either of you remember like a popular book at the time, you know, kind of like, you know, when Harry Potter took over and everybody was reading Harry? Do you remember like a favorite book that everybody couldn't get, that wasn't
Yeah, no.
school-based?
I can't
don't.
say I can remember from back then. I can remember some from high school, but not from from junior high.
Okay, let's turn a little bit to a not so good memory, a painful memory, either something that you saw, witnessed, happened to you. Do either one of you have a painful memory? I mean, you both sound like you had wonderful experience and loved being there.
I can't remember which school this was in, high school or junior high, but we went to an assembly, and one of the assistant principals like dropped dead in front of us. It was awful. It was terrible. But I don't remember if it was high school or. It seems to me it was the old hall for some reason, so it probably was high school. Yeah. But I don't have any bad memories from there.
I don't have memories from the school, but at the time when I was at the school, in '68, both Robert Kennedy and
Right.
Martin
Right.
Luther King were assassinated, and I can remember just being very solemn for many days after both of those events.
Right.
And it was interesting being at the Ottoson in the late 1960s. It was sort of like the best of times and the worst of times. You know, in terms of the economy, things were improving. Our parents had gone through World War II, and many of them the Depression, and you know, there was now money available. There was more relaxation in terms of security. But on the other hand, we dealt with the assassinations. We dealt with civil rights. Vietnam was starting to be on the screen for us.
Right.
And one thing that came out that was good from that is it gave us a sense of purpose. When I was going through school, both middle school and high school, we felt that we had a purpose in life, we had a mission in life, and that we would do what we were supposed to do because we were going to make this world a better place. So there was something wonderful about that. And I was reflecting in more recent days and thinking about people from my generation, some of which have now become more self-centered, and I hope I live long enough to understand why that happened. But back then, it was, you know, we were going to change the world. And I went into education for that very reason.
Janice, do you remember anything other than, you know, like when you look back, what are the things that really glare at you from the whole junior high experience?
Well, I don't ever remember being afraid to go there for some reason, and I know a lot of kids now are afraid to.
Oh, when
go.
they're entering
Right,
7th grade,
to
making
enter-
that
and
transition?
I don't ever remember that happening, and I don't know, I just enjoyed my friends in school, and I made new, I did have this one thing, it really ended up not being bad. For some reason, I probably opened my big mouth, but for some reason this girl wanted to beat me up, who was a tough girl there. So we were in the back of the Ottoson, And they said, she's coming out to beat you up. I was petrified because I wasn't a fighter. So she came out and I looked at her and I said, listen, I said, Barbara, I don't want to have a fight with you because I'm not a fighter. I said, I don't know what I did wrong, or if I did something wrong, I apologize, but I'd rather be friends. And we were friends since then, and we still are. So that was my worst probably fear, that I would have gotten in a fight with somebody.
If there was something that you wish they would still do today at Junior High West that you did, that you know pretty much they're not doing it, what would you bring back?
Oh, I'd bring back structure. I don't think there's any structure. Well, I don't know. I shouldn't say I don't think, but I feel as though the generations after me had a very structureless.
And when you think about like your grandchildren, like what kind of a junior high experience?
I don't feel like this generation is going to be cheated of anything that I had, to be honest with you. And I think that the lack of the structure is really a change in structure. Because I know when I started teaching, I taught in an open classroom space. Talk about being different than a traditional space. I think what we've done is we've incorporated, the best strategies that we've learned from, the previous decades. So I don't feel like my grandchildren are going to be cheated. I just hope they have as positive experiences I did. I wish it wasn't, I could tell you one thing, I wish it wasn't as competitive as it is now. There wasn't the same sense of competition when I was there. And I was school with some incredibly brilliant people, but it was a more relaxed environment. Now it seems it's a much greater push to be the best, the brightest, and the quickest.
It's almost like that focus on the individual as opposed to the whole group. Well, I want to thank you both for sharing your wonderful memories.
Well, thank you for inviting us.
Of the Junior High West Ottoson, which is celebrating its 100th anniversary this year. And we are planning on having a celebration on May 19th, Thursday night at the Sons of Italy, to which, of course, you're both invited.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll get some of the people who have gone to the Ottoson, have taught at the Ottoson, like Larry, you and I have, and can share more of these memories with some of your other friends, because I don't think there's anything. I didn't go to the Ottoson. My heart is at the Ottoson because I taught there. I never attended it, but I still love being with my colleagues in the past and sharing those memories, so I can imagine living in town and having your friends with you and sharing an evening with them would be absolutely wonderful.
It was fun.
Thank you both
Thank
so
you
much
very
for
much.
coming.
Appreciate it.